This evening's meeting of the local liaison forum. As a sign coming up on the screen says this meeting is being recorded, and so continuing to be in the webinar, you are consenting to be recorded. The second slide will show us the agenda. An introduction from myself. Phase 1 scheme status update, and this is between Cambridge and the A11. But we are taking two of the issues, the Haverhill Road A1307 junction realignment and Wanderbury, and the Babham Road Park and Ride site expansion as two separate items within that. And then we'll conclude with an update on phase 2 of the project. I understand that we've got two questions, if Michaela could confirm that.
Yes.
And they both relate to phase 2. So I'm happy to leave those till we come to phase 2, if that's all right with Howard, who asked the question. In which case, if we could go on to slide 3, please. So we want to make this session as interactive as possible. And what that means is throughout the evening, we'll be having just a small number of slides before we take a break for comment and discussion and feedback. We would ask you to note what it says there. The chat is enabled, but if all attendees could mute their microphones so that we don't get background noise and that everyone has clarity of sound throughout the session. And if you could indicate your desire to speak either through the raise hand tool in Zoom, which some of you have done, and if you haven't got that, if you could just indicate with a raise your hand on screen, and I'll try to make sure that everybody knows the order in which I pick them up and I've asked them to speak. The chair of the local liaison on forum. I'll ask panelists to so shall I start?
You're dropping out, Tony.
Yeah, okay. I said what I said was that I'd go round the panelists and ask them to introduce themselves very briefly. So if Andrew could start off, and then we'll just go around the panelists, please.
Andrew Munro from Greater Cambridge Partnership.
Ollie?
Okay.
Ollie Daffar, Mark McDonald on the CSET's phase 1 schemes.
Michaela?
Michaela Hadland, Communications for the Greater Cambridge Partnership.
Those are the only pictures I've got on screen. I mean, so if others would like to introduce themselves, please.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Martin Meehan. I'm the new project manager for the CSET phase 1 schemes.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bear Park, environmental lead on phase 1 and phase 2 for Mott MacDonald.
Mike Payne from Mott MacDonald. I'm the consultant project principal for both phase 1 and phase 2.
I'm Jane Osayima, GCP project manager for CSET phase 2.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Anna Newey. I'm supporting Ollie on the CSET phase 1. I'll be taking notes today.
Thanks very much, Anna. Right, so Martin's going to take us through the first set of slides.
I'll probably pass that honour to Ollie, Tony, if that's okay.
Okay.
He's more familiar with them. Yeah, the slides will just go through our CSET 1 phase 1 projects from Addenbrooke's to the A11. Ollie, could I hand over to you, please?
Yeah, really. Evening, everyone. Thanks for your time attending. And as Martin noted, the purpose of this session is really to give an update on the schemes between Cambridge and the A11, and particularly some proposals around the Haverhill Road following some previous sessions held between July and September last year, where a number of comments raised in relation to the proposals that were put forward. Okay, so starting off with scheme 1, which is the proposals at Granham's Road, just south of Adam Brooks and Warts Causeway, and the proposals to provide some localised widening to provide a dedicated right turn lane into Granham's road to alleviate a bottleneck on outbound traffic coming out of Cambridge. The status of this scheme, I think it was reported at the last session, was we were experiencing some road space issues in booking that and getting the scheme on site, and so it was subsequently delayed. But as of this week, we're expecting to be in a position to start on site during spring 2021, in conjunction with the Wanderbury Junction works, once they're sort of substantially underway, to minimise impact on the existing traffic on the network. The proposals are mainly widening with some replacement hedgerows and soft planting and trees to replace some of the existing trees that had been lost in that area, along with some service diversions required in the south verge of the 1307 in that big green expanse you can see on the screen there. So I'll just pause there as to whether there's any comments or queries in relation to that scheme.
Right, I've only got pictures of the panelists. I haven't got any pictures of participants. I can't see any participants at the minute.
Hi, Tony. Because it's a webinar, you can't see pictures of attendees because their cameras aren't enabled.
Oh, right.
If you on the right-hand side, you should have a panelist and attendee list.
Yes.
If you click on the attendee list, you can see people raising their little blue hands.
I've got the panelists on the right-hand side, but that's all. I can't see anybody out, anything with raised blue hands at all.
Have you clicked at the bottom of the bottom bar? There's a participant button.
Yep.
So on the right-hand side, you should then get the panelists and the attendees.
But you have to click on the attendees on the right-hand side to get the attendees rather than the panelists.
Yeah. But Miranda Fife has raised her hand for a question.
Okay, well, I'm happy for Miranda. Go on.
You should be able to speak now, Miranda. Sorry, we can't hear anything from you, Miranda.
No, I can't hear anything either.
Shall we take David Plank's got his hand up. So we'll take David.
Sorry, we do have Miranda did ask a question in the chat, and she just she just said that it's in the chat anyway. But she did ask, will the field edge path be reinstated?
So the works themselves will be mainly on the highway side of things. We're purchasing a small section of land from the highway. So the dark green line there is the proposed native hedgerow, which will then form the edge of the highway, the boundary essentially round on each side of things. In terms of what happens within the field, within the private land, is it's a matter for the private landowner themselves. But I expect some sort of headland to be kept around that side of things.
Is that all right, Miranda? I haven't heard any from Miranda. So can I go on to David Plank, please?
Hello.
Hello, David.
Hello, how are you? About the Granham roadworks, when in spring will they start and how long will they take?
So we're still in discussions with CCC Streetworks team, but we're hopeful to be starting on site at some point later in April. So I'd say some middle-ish spring. And in terms of duration, the current duration, there's two key parts of it. One, the main proposed works into what the scheme will be, the hedgerows, the widening, etc., and also the utilities part of it. In total, it's about between 10 to 12 weeks in duration for those two key parts. So assuming a late April, you're probably looking at May, June, end of July.
And the diversions in the meantime?
Diversions. So the proposals are likely to include a temporary closure of Granham's Road to provide better working space area and to minimise the impact on the main 1307 route and give space to construct the scheme on the south side mainly. There may be a couple of localised restrictions on the 1307 for specific tasks where there's new lighting columns going in as part of the scheme, but they'll be isolated and kept to a minimum on that basis. Whereas the Granham's Road maybe will be shut for a longer duration to get to help minimise the impact on the 1307.
Thank you.
All right, David.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Well, I don't have any other hands raised electronically, so with that, I'm going to go back to Ollie and take us back to the roundabout outside the entrance to Addenbrooks. And we'll now proceed along the 1307 from the Addenbrooks towards the Babram Park and Ride site.
Okay, great. So this is the most northern section. I can see Barbara Kettle's just raised her hand.
Yeah. Barbara, do you want to say something?
Right. The thing that concerns me very much about this is that the work for the busway, as opposed to the alterations on the roads that are part of the scheme that you're doing, yes, all the way along the 1307, the roads bits seem to already have started work. And we're concerned in the parishes as to why this has happened already.
I think
there is no work, Barbara, there are no works in connection with phase 2 that have started, and they will not start until we have consent to proceed to construction.
I think you might, yeah, I think, Barbara, you might be referring to archaeological work which has been undertaken. But,
yes,
that's going to be covered when we come to the phase 2 later on.
Okay, then. Okay. So, sorry to interrupt then.
No, it's all right. Okay, back to Ollie then.
So in this scheme, the proposals, this is the improvement of the cycleway between Addenbrooks roundabout down to the Babram Road Park and Ride sites, as indicated by the green line there. So in terms of an update, so there's a couple of options we've been looking at in relation to adjusting the Red Cross Lane pedestrian crossing and interface with modal filters on Nightingale Avenue that we'll present shortly as part of this scheme, but also give an update on the general principles of the scheme. This scheme aiming to be starting on site in summer 2021. We had similar issues in terms of road space booking as we experienced for Granham's Road, but at present we're targeting a start date on site of summer 2021. So a bit closer looking at the detail with Addenbrooks roundabout shown up the top left hand side here, and the proposal is to widen the path to a minimum of 3 meters to create a shared active travel path going south from Addenbrooks along Hills Road. The scheme GA that was previously presented, Nightingale kept the existing Red Cross Lane crossing in its current location shown there, crossing over Nightingale Avenue with a raised table and continuing again through along the 1307. Some additional bus shelters that were requested by the CCC transport team also being proposed at these locations, and some improvements to the curbs to improve access on and off bus stops at this location. So I mentioned the Nightingale and Red Cross Lane signal crossing. So we looked at, in light of some modal filters that have been introduced as a temporary measure currently on Nightingale Avenue, in that location just there, in terms of what that meant to potential increase in NMU using this as a crossing point over the 1307, and how that interfaced with the existing Red Cross Lane pedestrian crossing over here, which was off that key desire line from crossing from Nightingale Avenue into Red Cross Lane. So some outline proposals were developed, and we had a couple of internal discussions with CCC Signals, as well as meeting on site with some of the local councillors and nearby residents, which raised a number of concerns in relation to screening, potential impact on the existing wildlife corridor that runs between the 1307 and the Hills Road Service Road on that side. Which we've taken on board and looked at how best to try and fit the main objective of improving the NMU flows across this crossing point, whilst trying to minimise the impact in that location. So the main proposals is locating that crossing into this position here, so that there would no longer be a existing crossing to the north of this junction, and in light of the fact that there is no longer a through route for main traffic along Nightingale as a result of the modal filter, the proposals are to remove the existing turn-in to Nightingale Avenue at this location, and reduce the width of that opening down, which gives opportunity to actually extend the existing wildlife corridor in that location to improve some of the screening, while still locating the crossing as best as possible in terms of on the desire line for people coming across from Nightingale to Red Cross Lane. We did look at also options around closing on the Red Cross Lane side, and a number of issues in terms of where the access comes through from that. So this ended up being the emerging preferred option at this location.
We've got a couple of hands up for questions. Do you want to take those questions now, Tony?
Well, we've got
yeah, it might be a
Wookie first, and then we've got Sam Davis. So Wookie first. Mm-hmm. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
I'm not hearing anything.
No,
something in the chat.
No, there's nothing in the chat.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can now, yes.
Right, sorry, I hadn't clicked on enough buttons. Right, apologies. Yeah, so I live on Nightingale Avenue. I was at the workshop where this was originally discussed, and there was quite a lot of feedback suggesting that using the Addenbrooke side of the road, so that we didn't have such a narrow 3-metre shared use bidirectional thing, or the service road, but you haven't done any of that. So could you say why those didn't end up in the plan?
So on the Addenbrooke side, so crossing over on this.
The idea was possibly to have a crossing somewhere around where Warts Causeway comes out, so that the inbound stuff people would heading for the hospital, which would be quite a lot of the traffic, would change sides there and go down that side. So there'd be much less bidirectional use on the bit you've drawn up.
On that side, I'll just quickly skip sides. At the moment, the crossing is focused on the main sort of north-south route on that section, and we're not proposing to upgrade the path on this side at the moment in the scope of the scheme. And the path.
So the question is, why not?
That's a bad idea. Partly budget in terms of where we're looking to. Otherwise, we're looking to try and widen both sides of the path. And in terms of the scope of this scheme, was mainly focused around the crossing of NMUs using from Nightingale to Red Cross and vice versa.
I've got a question about that as well, if I'm allowed to.
Yes, go on.
Why can't we just go straight across? Why have a shared use offset? I mean, I can see that the pedestrian being where the crossing is there, but for the cyclists, you just want to go straight across. We don't want to be zigging around and using the pavement and crushing everybody together onto 3-metre wide bits. Separating the cycle and pedestrian flows and having a direct line for the bikes surely would be better.
So we looked at that in terms of what was feasible with whilst still having to maintain the traffic in and out of Red Cross Lane, and keeping, so you're basically you're talking about having a cycles that would come up to this point as a crossing and then cross over at this point.
Well, on the left hand side, but you know, so sort of next adjacent, make the what do you call them, a parallel crossing maybe. So the pedestrian crossing and a bike crossing next to it, which is more or less in line with the exactly.
So we tried to push it as close as we could to this one, and we're actually looking to ban the right turn out of Red Cross Lane. Normally you like to have a good distance so that here you can see the aspect of the signal, so you don't turn out and go against the right turn. So we didn't want to push any further this way. We tried to push it as close as we can, whilst not impacting on that ability to be able to turn right and still see the signal head at this location. And by having a separate cycle crossing, I guess at that point you'd be pushing it further that way because you'd need to have the signal and the stop line for the vehicles more in this location.
Right, okay.
Okay, Sam Davis, please.
Hi. So it's a bit difficult because obviously I'm seeing the slide for the first time and there's quite a lot of detail. But am I correct in concluding that the entrance to Nightingale is stopped there to cars? And
correct. So there's no vehicle access into Nightingale from that location.
Okay, so how is that compatible with the notion that the Nightingale closure is experimental and temporary? And how does that fit with the very clear request, I think, which came back from the local residents when you spoke to them, that some form of entrance and exit there would be retained for the service road users?
So the service road, we would still look to utilise the existing access up on up at the other end of Warts Causeway, and just make sure if there's any minor improvements needed to that geometry at that location, while still taking on board the impact or not impacting on the existing wildlife corridor on that section. In relation to the access off this part, I wasn't aware of the specific need to keep that. Personally, I can double check with a colleague who attended that meeting, but wasn't aware of the specific element of keeping that open as an access as well as the other access up off Warts Causeway.
There was a long conversation about things like bin access and so on. I think something maybe has got dropped in translation between different parties here. I'm really very surprised to see this slide because I thought the discussion had very much indicated that this wouldn't be happening. I think it will come as quite a shock to people.
This is a design for consultation. I wonder whether Martin or Ollie or Michaela could just outline how we're going to do this consultation.
I think obviously we'll take these comments on board, and I think it's probably a follow-up discussion, possibly another a meeting on site with yourself, Sam, and probably some other key resident associations that representatives.
Yes, Ollie, I think that would be the best way forward to address the concerns that have been raised on this particular issue.
Yeah, could I just come in at this point? If Nightingale Avenue was closed at Hills Road, then the service users, the people living on the service road would use the entrance to the service road from Warts Causeway. But wouldn't that then give a through route down the service road and then through Nightingale Avenue?
No, as the modal filter would remain in place, and in terms of obviously there's the interface in terms of how that sits as to the processes that need to go through to convert that or potentially resubmit that as a as a permanent measure, as a separate one. Just noting your comment there, Sam. But it wouldn't be a through route, so you wouldn't go up and then be able to turn right, as that modal filter would remain.
Okay, right. I've now got David Blake, Colin Greenhouse and Simon Talbot in that order. So if David would like to speak next, please.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple of short questions. I'd like Sam Davis, who's only just seen this picture. I noticed the existing parking provision removed from Red Cross Lane. I mean, that's good for people who live in Red Cross Lane, but have you considered where all the vehicles are going to park? And the second question is, down at the Addenbrooks roundabout, I raised last time the issue of access because of a traffic light, Panda Crossing sort of down there for obstructing cycles. Has anything been done about that?
Is that on there's two existing lighting columns just off?
Yeah, it's I can't point. It's further along. There's in fact a level crossing, a pedestrian crossing just about there, and you can't get a bike and a person through it or past it.
We are doing some widening just at that location. We are limited as to what we can do within the extents of the highway boundary, but we are widening the path as much, and there's opportunity just to tweak that post as much as we can without wanting to impact on the set distances that the signal pole needs to be at.
Okay, and what about Red Cross Lane and the parking? Has anything been considered for that?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I believe it was considered in terms of that, and part of the element of providing additional parking at Bayburn Park and Ride was to offset some of that parking loss. But I will take that away and just confirm that back.
Okay, because currently there's although there's a COVID issue, there's still an enormous amount of parking, and taxis are now parking in the local area, which is leading to even greater problems. So it is an issue to be addressed.
Okay, so that's been noted, Ollie.
Yep.
Okay, and I've got Colin Greenhouse, please. Colin.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, this is a general question, really. I mean, we've been told that the busway will be tremendously successful in reducing the amount of traffic going into Addenbrooks. If that is the case, why are all these other improvements necessary on the existing road?
They were proposed. There are a number of proposals which are addressing various different problems. So we're tackling some safety issues, so existing existing accident cluster sites. But in the context of this, it's to improve cycling and pedestrian facilities from Bayburn Road Park and Ride, and further afield from ultimately from Linton through the Linton Greenway. So we have a proposal for 12 radial greenways around Cambridge, one of which is the Linton Greenway, which runs alongside the A1307. So the improvements we're doing are in connection with improving cycling, walking. In some cases, bus priority measures where the busway won't extend to at the moment. So that's the other side of the A11. And addressing existing safety problems.
I'm afraid I don't find that very convincing. I would have thought if you take the substantial amount of traffic off this road that is being suggested, that a lot of these problems will disappear. And we've already heard that as far as cyclists are concerned, there's going to be a more complicated crossing from Nightingale Avenue to Red Cross Lane than there is at the moment.
I think although we will take traffic off the road, traffic volumes will still remain significant.
Which seems to me to underline the case of the busway.
We can only, people who have destinations in Cambridge, for whom the busway perhaps won't be as convenient, will still use Hills Road, as will local traffic. So, for example, any traffic which came down Warts Causeway or came from Cherry Hinton down to Hinton Way would not be able to benefit from the busway, so they would still use Hills Road. And you know, buses would still run along here.
What proportion of the traffic coming into the Addenbrooke's roundabout is represented by what you just described, rather than coming straight down the Haverhill Road?
I haven't got the figures in the top of my head, I'm afraid. I don't know, Mike, whether you're able to assist.
Well, one point that I think is relevant that I can assist with is we need to bear in mind that there is very significant planned growth at the biomedical campus that will increase the overall number of people travelling on this corridor during the period between now and when the phase 2 scheme is planned to open. So we're not these proposals collectively between phase 1 and phase 2 are not to deal with the situation today. They are to deal with the consequences of the significant planned growth in this corridor, you know, within the existing local plan period and beyond, depending on what's in the next local plan. So it's not, you know, the phase 1 proposals are focused on dealing with you know, problems that exist now. The phase 2 proposals are longer term and are focused on addressing the consequences of housing and employment growth in this corridor.
But we still don't know, when COVID is over, how many people are going to go back to work in offices and how many will continue to work from home. So that's what the medium term prospect is, and there's uncertainty. I mean, certainly at the moment, every bus I see going into Cambridge is pretty well empty.
Yes, we agree with that, but we're looking in terms of the phase 2 at a scheme which won't open until end of 24, beginning of 25. Hopefully COVID will be a memory then, but we are awaiting further guidance from the Department for Transport on economic growth, which is expected in February this year. And we're also looking at research into the potential impacts of COVID and looking at the modelling of that in order to update our business case, which we'll be bringing back to the Executive Board for a decision whether or not to proceed any further with the phase 2 proposals in July this year.
Okay, Tony, I think you've been very fair to me. I can't take any more time. Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you for the panel as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Were there any other?
Well, I was going to suggest you, and then she could circulate them around to all members of the local liaison. Simon, please.
Question for Ollie, really, to just debug the language. What is a potential modal filter? Could you just unpack that for the less planning savvy, please?
Apologies. It's a fancy word for an obstruction that could be a bollard or a planter to prevent generally vehicular traffic from passing through, but it has some gaps in it to allow pedestrians and cycles.
That's fine. Thank you, Ollie. That's exactly what I thought it was, but I just thought I'd ask the question regardless. Thank you.
Okay. I have seen an email message from Miranda. Just wanted to come back on Granham's Road.
Oh, can't hear.
I had an email message from Miranda saying she just wanted to come back on Granham's Road.
Yeah, you've unmuted me now. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, we can, Miranda.
Hooray. So you batted that back to me saying that the responsibility for the field edge path is the landowner at that point, and I've double checked, and the landowner is Cambridgeshire County Council for that field. So as I said in the chat, surely somebody here can speak on behalf of Cambridgeshire County Council. If you've acquired land, you've acquired it from Cambridgeshire County Council. You know, there's a field edge path round there which has been in good use for non-motorised users. Will it be reinstated? Because it looks like you're putting your hedge where the existing field path is.
So essentially, I'm not representing a member of CCC's legal team, but I know that the land is owned by CCC, but ultimately leased to a tenant farmer. The details of that agreement I couldn't comment on, but the principle is the hedgerow would form back to that proposed hedgerow replaces the existing hedgerow that was previously along or currently along that existing line where my mouse indicates. So that hedge line again was effectively the boundary between highway and private land. What was provided behind that hedge was down to the tenant farmer or CCC, again dependent on the land agreement, and the principle of the scheme here is the same. So whilst this section in front of the hedge will become CCC, there'll be no further rights by the farmer because that will become effectively adopted highway, so it becomes the highway authority to maintain all the way up to the hedge.
Are you talking about a path on the other side of the hedge?
Yeah, there's at the moment there has been a very wide field margin, which was a nice one to ride around until you grubbed out the hedge. So now it's exposed to the road. But by the looks of it, your new replacement hedge and trees and everything arrangement will be on top of what's currently a wide field edge boundary that's good to ride on and walk dogs on. And I have a nasty suspicion that then now the farmer will be ploughing up to the edge of your new hedge and there'll be no more riding around that corner, which would be a bit of a blow.
Miranda, I sometimes use that facility to do some dog walking. I'd imagine what the position is that the pathway as currently formed is simply because he doesn't plough, the tenant farmer doesn't plough it to the extremes of the hedge because he just can't do that and he needs the space to turn around machinery and such like. So I'd imagine that the pathway that's there currently would be replicated just in a different location as behind the new hedge.
Right, so you think the existing equivalent width will come in, do you think?
I would believe so. I mean, I can't say 100% that's the case, but typically if you're going to plough a field, you can't go right up to the hedgerow. So that's why these pathways are around the field in the first place. So
well, if only that were true, we could ride around every field in the county, but that's not the
case. maybe the owner might have something to say to that, but it is council land. So that's what I'd anticipate would happen. But we can check that.
Thank you. It'd be good if you could check and get back to us.
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah.
Thanks.
Right, well, I'm going to go back to Ollie now and take us on to the entrance to the park and ride site.
Okay. So just continuing the path of the pathway widening on that north side of Bowman Road with the tightening of the Warts Causeway junction to provide a better alignment for the crossing, the active travel crossing at that junction, and then continues down along the Bowman Road again, minimum of 3 meters wide, and that while still providing some segregation from the main 1307 at that location.
Okay.
Continuing down, this is the location of the recently installed Toucan Crossing by Hill Construction. So again, we're tying into that path that goes around the edge of the Bell School. And then again, the widening continues further down past Granham's Road, all the way along, again with providing segregation from keeping a verge width on that section through for the 1307.
Go on.
And the same principle all the way down past the proposed location of the GB2 development at this location. Now the timing of that, we're on discussions with the developers to the timing of when they may be looking to implement their elements. The path itself is shown there relative to the existing arrangement, but the proposals there would be for the cycleway priority to continue through albeit at a setback distance around at the proposed location for that development as and when it occurs.
Okay.
And then continues down past the existing Audi garage up to, and then ties into the existing crossing at the bus entrance to Baverham Road Park and Ride site.
And there was some discussion at that site at the past local liaison forum meeting, wasn't there? Any comments on that from anyone?
David.
Yeah, David Blake, and then I'll bring Matt Danish in.
Yeah,
So David.
I do remember one of these earlier LFF meetings when the issue of the Audi garage was raised, and it was suggested possibly that they'd encroached on council land. Is that still the situation?
That is the case, yes.
So you've sort of kindly awarded them the land, have you?
No. We will be working with the highways officer to claim back the land or agree a new boundary.
Okay. And the other thing is, there's been discussion in the past about the hedge from the edge at the end of the pathway as it sort of comes around GB2 all the way down to the park and ride. Is that all going to definitely be retained, the hedge?
Yes, we did look at an earlier stage of re-establishing a new hedgerow in order to achieve a wider path, or even as possibly a segregated path. But it was very clear that hedgerow wasn't going to be able to be removed. So that hedgerow remains through there. Obviously, the developer will need to have some minor impact on that when they bring their development forward. But the pathway itself keeps that existing hedgerow along that section.
Okay, great.
So I've got Matt.
Hi, is this working? Okay.
Yes.
Great. So yeah, just a couple of questions. What is the first one is what is the tan, I guess, where you have the Audi garage entrances? You have a kind of a tan. Why isn't the NMU path continuous here? And then the other question is about where you have traffic lights. For example, well, we can only see half of the Park and Ride Junction design, which I've raised as a problem area before.
Yeah.
But also at Wards Causeway, I understand the constraints you're working in. I just kind of worried that when traffic signal poles go in and button poles go in, that a lot of the space will become obstructed and a lot narrower than it looks right now. It looks a bit awkward right now. So I'm hoping that some more detail can be shown to show that this is actually spacious and it's actually allowing people to flow without conflict.
Okay. So just taking each of those points in turn, the tan is a hangover from the engineering drawings. That's the visual proposals was to highlight this crossing as an HFS, but the principle being that this pathway remains a continuous and the priority is for the cycleway. And apologies, when HFS high friction surfacing as a detailed proposal. And that crossing, so that was the tan element. The second one, the Baverham Park and Ride Junction itself, we'll maybe touch on separately. At the moment, the extent of the section 1 cycleway improvements finishes at this location, but obviously section 2 picks up exactly where it left off, and you'll see in a couple of slides' time one of the elements that may still well be looking at following a review of the funding is to reconfigure this junction to improve this situation. As it is, the existing path through there is 2 meters wide, providing some additional marking off to allow cyclists to join the road going into the park and ride site. But at present, that path entrance and width there is limited space. However, if we are successful in terms of being able to develop some more proposals around this area, then there's more opportunity to give a better flow across that junction. And apologies, you had a third point.
Yeah, both here and Wards Causeway, the pathway takes a very sharp turn as it reaches the traffic light. And when you add the signal poles into that, it gets a little bit more worrisome, because right now you're not showing the poles. And I could just foresee the poles being a real obstacle course here if it's not.
I can send you a detailed layout with the poles on, but I think the pathway actually widened out slightly, particularly on those 2 points, just to give a bit more space in these locations and make sure the poles don't act as an obstruction, as you say.
I'd also like to make sure that you're putting in detection, at least for cycles. Certainly would be nice for all active travel, but for cycles, so that people aren't forced to push the button. They can actually be detected as they approach the signal. Especially with Ward's Causeway, there's going to be a lot of delay because of the nature of the signals. You're going to have a dedicated phase, I assume, here.
For the active travel crossing, yes.
So that's going to take a while to come around. So certainly anything to make that, to alleviate that, would be appreciated, like being detected in advance.
Okay, Rachel circulated a question. Does anyone want to pick that up, or does Rachel want to pose the question verbally? Rachel Northfield.
Hi, am I on? Hello.
Hello.
Hi, it's Rachel Northfield, representing Cambridge Biomedical Campus. I'm really keen to know about signage that's going to go in to support people finding their way backwards and forwards to along the whole length of this route, to be honest, so that it's that there's an early indication as to where the preferred or perhaps more advantageous cycle routes and pedestrian routes can be found to get across to the campus, and people start to peel off, making it less busy as you get further towards the roundabout for those sorts of transport. And I know that the new pathway has already gone in along the back of the 9 Wells development, but I'm not sure that there's any signage or anything like that yet to support people knowing that there is a route into the campus or across towards the fields and to the cycle routes that it links with at that junction. So I wondered what was happening about signage along there.
Thanks very much.
In terms of the biomedical, we haven't actually provided specific signing at that crossing location to encourage people to take it, but noted that down, and maybe as a action, we after this session we have a separate discussion as to where the current wayfinding proposals are. And if there's a couple of signs that, just for the sake of it, extra line on a wayfinding sign is.
That'd be great. We'd really support that, and we'd also support it at the Red Cross Lane junction as well. To again support people coming into the campus in different ways, depending on different modes of transport, because we think that will help the congestion at the roundabout, particularly with the different modes of transport all crossing there.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. I've now got 3 people: Linda Worth, Neville Silverstone, and David Blake. So Linda, please.
Hi Tony, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Ollie, GB1, the GB1 development, which is off this route, that contains, or it certainly did when it went to planning, I haven't seen it recently, it contained a cross-site bridleway, which linked on to the existing permissive bridleway that goes around the park and ride site. At the time that the planning application was in and we requested this site, we actually had access across from the fields on the corner of Granham Road and Babraham Road. Now, what facilities are you allowing or including in there to enable equestrians to get across to this proposed bridleway? Obviously, that's going to be really important once hopefully the proposed NMU route down from the back of Wanderbury comes into existence. And can you just clarify, please, you're talking about NMU routes, you're talking about shared pedestrian and cycle routes here.
Ollie? Yeah, sorry. So in terms of this is the crossing you were referring to, which is currently a Toucan crossing facility at that location. And the path that I think you're talking about linking up to would be just up across the development and link up through that way. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That junction where that Toucan Crossing is now, they actually removed the bridleway gate out of there.
That's it. That location on the south side.
Yeah.
So in terms of that, obviously we've got the segregation into to allow for the active travel elements of that to be able to be suitable for equestrian use, to be able to connect up into that.
Super. Thank you very much indeed. That's great.
Neville?
Not hearing anything.
Can't hear anything.
He's muted at the moment.
Yes, Neville, you're muted. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Could you move over to the new Toucan Crossing over Babram Road? The earlier slide you showed demonstrated, was it a new footpath from the Toucan Crossing on the west side along the access to all the houses on the west side of Babram Road, moving again slightly further south than that particular.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm struggling. So there was the recently installed crossing on Babram Road here that was put in probably 3 months ago by Hill Construction, then going south down to Granham's Road location.
Yes.
Is that the section you're referring to?
Yes, yes. I'm referring to the footpath, the present footpath on the west side of Babram Road that goes up the access.
Let's see, there's a small path on that other side, just off screen here. That one.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no connection between the end of that road, footpath, and the Toucan Crossing, and it's just grass, which is now a long muddy patch. Between 50 and 80 people choose to proceed off the crossing and along that footpath. The earlier slide you showed indicated that the cyclists on that footpath have right of way over the people living in the houses.
Yes, so the prior, in terms of the cycleway, there's no giveaway markings at each individual driveways on this.
Yes,
side. That's correct.
That present cycleway, that present footpath, isn't a cycleway. That present footpath is only 1 meter wide. It's in a dreadful condition. It's been breaking up for years, and it doesn't join the Toucan Crossing. It's about 15 meters.
Yeah, I think if the questions are asking whether it's feasible to provide that connection to the path,
and also to upgrade the path.
On that south side, running up all the way along to.
Yes.
I see.
I mean, here you show state cyclists to have priority over existing private accesses, but that path isn't in the right position. It's not shown in the right position. It's some meters over in a southerly direction, but it's only 1 meter wide. It's heavily potholed. It's breaking up and has been breaking up for years.
So the two parts. So on all the main works. There's the shared cycleway on the east side of the 1307 is where we're doing the works and the resurfacing and doing the widening from existing 2-metre path out to get a 3-metre wide shared facility. The path I think you're referring to on the west side, which is a lot narrower, as you say, it is more like 1.5 metres, which is that light line running along there, is more of a track, almost verging on a track, partly because of its condition. At present, there's no proposals on that side to resurface that path or provide the link, the missing link up to the crossing at that point.
I mean, a lot of people do come use the access road to the Nine Wells estate to access Addenbrooke's, the Rosie and Papworth. As I say, they have to first of all leave the Toucan Crossing, traverse about 20 meters of mud, and then go up to the entrance to the access road to the Nine Wells estate, called Knightley Avenue.
I think
it's really quite heavily used.
So maybe that's something we can take away, Martin, in terms of a discussion about a possible link should funds allow on that path.
Yeah, Ollie, let's take a note and do that. Thank you.
Okay, in which case we can move on to David Blake, please. David.
Okay, just a quick question. I thought the idea about extra signs was good because obviously people need to know where to go to. But can I just raise the issue they should be relevant signs and the old signs should be removed? I raise this because having been knocked over now almost several times around the Fendon Road roundabout, I noticed that there are 7 signs in one area which are totally confusing, and it would be wrong to have a load of new signs with not removing the old ones. Thank you.
Yeah, we will remove the old ones.
Okay, well, that's a clear answer there. Back to Ollie and taking us further along the 1307.
Okay, great. So, as mentioned, the next section in terms of the Linton Greenways between Baberham Road Park and Ride down to the Baberham Research Campus. I'm just going to move that further out. So, in terms of where that the status of that scheme, there were a couple of key comments raised on that in the sessions we had September last year, notably around those key areas noted on the screen. So Baberham Park and Ride Junction, which is the one I mentioned earlier in conversation with Matt Danish. Some measures around the Hinton Way roundabout and improving that section to reduce crossing widths and adjusting curb alignments to be able to provide safer and a less spacious setting for the roundabout, and also improve therefore the crossing of the enemy path as at that location, as well as some pinch points further south, closer to the Baberham Research Campus, a challenge to see what else that could be done to improve the pinch points in the south of Copley Hill. Now that those couple of measures is undergoing a sort of a funding review to verify that we've got the funds to be able to deliver those elements and improvements and recognise the value that they bring. So at present we're unable to present sort of some further details or status on that scheme. So really this is an update of, it hasn't been forgotten, it's still in progress, but as I say, it is subject to a funding review just to verify that particularly those key areas can be picked up.
I'm sure those issues that you've just raised will form the basis of a future local liaison forum meeting.
That's correct.
So they haven't been forgotten about, they haven't been ignored. We will come back to them in due course. Okay, on you go, Ollie.
So that was the main slide for...
Sorry, Simon Talbot wanted to say something.
Ollie, just for a bit of clarity, when you come down from the north on this plan to Hinton Way, there is speed limit reduction here. That it could do with that speed limit being moved further up to make sure that the traffic is coming down to a suitable speed, not still doing often in excess of 40 in that 30-mile-an-hour section. Some effort to reduce the traffic speed onto that roundabout would be really good coming south. Well, it's not south actually, is it?
Yeah,
No.
it's coming down past,
south, yeah, past the hospice. There is a 40-mile-an-hour limit, but it goes. I think the 40-mile-an-hour begins shortly after the entrance to the golf club.
I said the existing limit, I think 40 starts just here and goes and then up, and I can't remember how far it goes up on this direction.
That's right. Yeah.
At present, the scope of what the original proposals here, we're not looking to provide any signal crossing or whatever. It's more about what geometry and adjustments we can make in the vicinity of the roundabout, and that was the scope of the improvements of item B. In terms of speed elements and improvements on that, interestingly, in our discussions around a separate scheme with CCC and the police, that section actually came up in conversation about merits of introducing speed limits that subsequently don't get adhered to. And about the setting of the environment and that. So I think probably they'll be limited in terms of what we can do within the scope of this project on that section, but certainly around the focus around the crossing and the immediate bits either side of that, and particularly traffic as it is leaving the roundabout and on the immediate approach in terms of visibility, would be something that we'd look to, again, subject to the funding review.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on you go, Ollie.
Okay. Was there any other questions on this section? If not,
I haven't got anybody at the minute. John Batchelor.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. It's John Batchelor, District Council for the Linton Ward. As I could just say, welcome, Martin, first. You joined us. Some of us here have been sitting around for the last 5 years discussing all this. So I hope good luck to you anyway. Just wondering what's the plan with the farm shop, how the...
We're coming on to that's a later agenda item, John.
In fact, possibly the next.
No,
possibly
the next
one.
About the actual cycle route.
Exactly that. So because of the intricacies and the wider elements of that as a scheme, the elements of the cycle route are being covered under that scheme. Scheme delivery, because it's sort of integral with the proposals in that area. So and then that's, as you can probably see now, it's the next agenda item.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Okay, Ollie, do you want to present it?
Great. So so Haverhill Road realignment and Wanderbury. So what's on screen at the moment is what the previous proposal that was presented back in August last year, with a number of comments received in relation to the proposals, which we've taken on board and done some further work and discussions with internal CCC teams and also some stakeholders in the area. So what I want to go through now is a little bit more detail in terms of what the revised proposals are. So a quick summary of some key comments that came up from the session last year in relation to the Golden Gold Farm Shop. A lot of concern around the turning movements, a lot of concern raised around the speed and the perceived safety of an at-grade crossing at this location. Comments around the size of the refuge that was previously proposed, which was approximately 3 meters by about 6 meters in size in total. A number of comments in relation to signals. I want to introduce signals at this location, as well as catering for making sure we were catering for all active travel users in this area. So thought initially start with just a key summary of some key elements that we have gone away and looked at further and brought into the design since. So at the farm shop, it is an existing accident cluster site, and the accidents are related to right turn bans. So right turn movements, both out of Haverhill Road and also the farm shop itself, as well as straight across. Now, part of the fundamental of the schemes realigning the Haverhill Road deals with that, but it's clear that from the sessions last year that there was more that was being pushed to be done in that area. So the proposals now incorporate right turn bans for both of those arms, so a lot simpler movements at that junction. And the limit of the works, rather than focusing just on the junction, has been extended to the south to assist in managing driver speed and behaviour on the approach. So rather than immediately a 2-lane 70-mile-an-hour section on the approach to the junction travelling towards Cambridge, it drops down to 50 and a single lane, and the same going outbound from Cambridge. There was a push for 50 miles an hour, and we did have further discussions with the police, but as I alluded to earlier, both them and CC Highways would not support a further reduction below 50 in this location. Some further work in terms of what we could do with the crossing. So you'll see in a minute when I share the proposals, there's a significant increase in the size for the crossing at this location. But we also looked at some signals, potential options around here, but on account of usage and envisaged usage at this location, that they did not get support from the appropriate teams within CCC who'd be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of them. So moving on to just a quick overview of the scheme. So to give it a bearing, the existing Haverhill Road is here with the Gog farm shop located here. And the original proposals were focused around in this area. So you'll see from here, the extent of the scheme is extended significantly in terms of helping to manage driver behaviour on the approach, and the speed reductions that should also assist with that. The realigned Haverhill Road remains a feature of the scheme, as does the at-grade crossing. And these blue squares indicate I'll do a bit more of a zoomed in look as we go through the next couple of slides. So focusing in on those, the sort of the core areas in relation to active travel. So if we start with that as an active travel user, using the path on the north side of the 1307, coming across, remains a proposals to deviate away from and bring them into the junction, similar to what mentioned earlier at the that's being proposed at the GB2 development, and the path away from that section and then continue over there. At present, we're proposing the priority at that location to be for cycles, provided we can achieve the appropriate visibility and safe intervisibility between users. But the current proposals are for priority for the active travel path at that location. Then continues along up over the existing hill on the existing path through there, and back down. At which point, where we get to the Wanderbury Crossing, there's some measures in that location which, due to the lane reduction on the main 1307, are able to do some improvements to the path at the interface with the 1307. Coming the other way, again, with the lane reduction, we're able to provide a better crossing point with clear visibility and a reduced distance for active travel users to cross, and this path in this verge along here is specifically aimed at providing a soft verge for equestrian users, so equestrians can travel in the direction of traffic rather than facing onwards. But at that location, there's also paths and existing connections into the Magog Trust land at that location. That path would be within the existing highway boundary through there, so not requiring any vegetation clearance. There may be some minor cutbacks in terms of the existing foliage, but no removal of hedgerows, etc., in order to achieve that path through there. And then come back down to the crossing points in terms of active travel from the north side of the 1307 to cross over onto the Haverhill Road. So the key measures here is we extended that existing central reservation down. So previously there was a single splitter island between the two right turn movements, but by banning the right turn movements at this junction, we've been able to effectively provide that a significantly larger central island to give a better safety and a perception of safety as well to users using that as well as space for all active travel path users at that location. If you're a driver and using the road network, then the key impact is in relation to the movements. So coming out of Cambridge, you're still able to turn right into Haverhill Road, into the realigned Haverhill Road, and you're able to turn left into the farm shop. Going up over the hill, the reduction of 2 lanes to 1 lane means that you're able to turn as a dedicated lane into Wanderbury, again, albeit with the priority for the path. But you're also able to also providing a right turn lane to be able to carry out a U-turn movement should you so wish, in order to get back in the opposite direction. That U-turn movement is fundamentally for people who are no longer able to turn right out of the farm shop. In the other direction, coming up over the hill, the relocation of the right turn into the Wanderbury at this location helps to simplify this arrangement. So instead of vehicles having to use that crossover from both directions, this becomes effectively a one-way arrangement for vehicles just leaving Wanderbury or the right turn U-turn movement. So if you were coming towards Cambridge but wish to turn right into Wanderbury, you'd use the existing right turn facility just the other side of the hill, and we're proposing some minor widening works in order to accommodate that, as well as some improvements to the verge on that side to improve visibility on that for vehicles turning out and right. At that point, I'll skip on to the next slide that then zooms into a bit closer detail for each of the junctions. So here you can see that again, the Haverhill Road alignment with the right turn into Haverhill Road, but no right turn out of Haverhill Road with islands to enforce that. So if you were coming down from Haverhill Road and wish to turn right, you would either go up to the Hinton Way roundabout and turn back around, or potentially consider another cross route rather than the Haverhill Road. And on the farm shop side, again, the right turn out of the farm shop, as mentioned, using the facilities just up towards the top of the hill on that side, instead of turning right out. So this remains a physical island to prevent those movements, and the same with this side. And a slightly more bigger picture in terms of the other elements of the crossing points. So the right turn I mentioned earlier, and the minor widening at this location. We're also proposing some path surfacing to help improve the link up to the existing bus stops in that location and across to the existing path on that side. Apologies. And at the Wanderbury Junction, again, the path crossing from the Magog Trust side over to land on the other side, again, only crossing one lane in each direction, while still tying back into the main active travel path that runs along that side. And at this location, the path steps away from the Wanderbury Junction. Again, the priority on the cycles at that location, but by by having some less space for the road traffic and more space for the active travel user, there's improved visibility at that location. And then just to complete the picture, south of Wanderbury, I mentioned that the single lane proposals. So if you're going out of away from Cambridge, the path continues in its current location, but instead of the 2 lanes, there's an increased separation between the existing path and the traffic. So a significant improvement in terms of the separation between path and roadway through that section, all the way down to where the dual carriageway section finishes, just north of Copley Hill Estates. And the same in the other direction. There's no longer a 2-lane section, and that remains 1 lane, and all of this will be a 50 miles an hour sections, which will link up with the recently implemented 50 mile an hour from Babraham Research Campus. So if you come off the A11 and head towards Cambridge, you will only know a 50 mile an hour limit all the way through to Hinton Way roundabout.
I think Jim Chisholm, that's answered your question in the chat, I believe.
Yeah, I've got Kathleen Foreman and then Simon Talbot. So Kathleen, please.
I'm very pleased to see that there's no vegetation going to be moved to accommodate the equestrian path. We spoke about that at one of our meetings. Has any decision been taken as to the kind of redundant land that is formed? I haven't got the right slide up.
It's
from the land between the bicycle track and where the Haverhill Road used to be. Yes, that section and the section to the right of that, to the Maygold Trust boundary fence.
So when we looked at this we haven't had any recent discussions with the CCC asset team since that, but when we last discussed it and the proposals, the landscaping proposals in that area, I believe were calcareous grassland mix. Yes. And I think given the nature that the existing Haverhill Road here would need to remain adopted highway because there's some services in it, and this would remain that, then I think begrudgingly this would remain highways, albeit they may carry out limited maintenance on it unless it's in visibility displays. It's a point that we'd look to reinvigorate ahead of any further planning application, just to agree the details for, but I believe the proposals previously were calcareous grassland mix. Sarah, I know you're on the call, you may.
I think people may not be aware of it, but with the increased pressure on open land now and country access, parking is a real problem, and people are parking cars everywhere on the side of the A1307 and the Haverhill Road. I think stringent measures would have to be taken to prohibit car parking access to these areas.
Agreed. In the sort of the picking up the detail of the design of that, both at this end and also the opposite end where the two merge together.
Yes.
Particularly in terms of access to that path and making sure that there's no possibility for vehicles to access that path through there. So it's a detail that we can. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Kathleen. Right. I've got Simon Talbot and then James Littlewood, and I've also noted that Barbara Cattell has asked a question. So we have Simon first, then James, and then an answer to Barbara's question. Simon,
thanks, Tony. Ollie, splendid. The revised designs look very good, and it'll make a big difference, I think, to road users and pedestrians and others on that section. What's the time scale? What sort of time have you got projected for construction?
So we still need to go through planning process. I don't think we didn't want to sort of prejudge the outcome of that, but assuming that planning can go in and get approved this year, then in an ideal world, you'd like to think the tail end of this year, but I think reality may kick in and it may be later. It may be 2022 that this comes forward. But Martin, correct me if I've spoken out of turn on that point.
No, Ollie, that's an interesting challenge. So we will try and make that happen. Yes.
Great. Thanks very much.
Okay, James Littlewood. James, please.
Hi, yeah. Ollie, when you showed us these before, I'd just say I'm from Cambridge Past, Present and Future. We went and had a look at the new sort of turning, well, not the new one, but the one that's rarely used at the moment at the top of the hill. And there's definitely a blind spot there when you're in a vehicle and looking down the hill. The sort of traffic goes along and disappears for a while in a dip. Can you just confirm that you've actually been and looked at that, and you know that there is a way of resolving that?
Yes, in terms of the sight line, when you're sat there, when you look this way, we're not showing the hatching there because we didn't want to confuse it with a pathway, but we're looking to basically do some adjustments to that verge to reduce the level a little bit, but also surface it so you haven't got the risk of vegetation coming loose, as well as the potential for some resurfacing of that junction. A combination of those measures should improve the visibility at that section.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Barbara had a question that she circulated around. Do we have an answer to it, please?
Yes, I think she's talking about purchasing the land.
Yes.
On the corner on the Cambridge side, where the new active travel route goes across. Yes, we will be purchasing that land.
Okay, Barbara. Right, I don't have any other questions at the minute, so I've seen a number of positive comments being circulated around about the new design, and it's been much improved compared with what we considered.
Barbara's still got her hand up, I think.
Yeah, so she has. Barbara? Need to unmute Barbara.
Doesn't allow me to. What's happening when you do this is that it doesn't allow us to unmute. You need to unmute from your end.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, my concern is that as you go down the Haverhill Road, there is now a deviated Haverhill Road coming down, and you don't get far down before you get to the entrance to the car park for the Gog. So I'm just wondering, how far down does that deviation go, and where will it join back with the existing Haverhill Road? Because that's off your plan.
Okay, so you're referring to just off here. So
your zoomed out plan show that, Ollie?
Yeah, that's what I was just jumping to. So if you can just see that. So effectively that was the plan we were just looking at.
Yeah.
The realignment of the Haverhill Road ties in just before the existing entrance to the Magog Trust car park, which is just off screen at this location here.
And the other bit is a non-motorized user. Is that
correct? So the active travel path would be continue along the line of the existing Haverhill Road, and then we'll look to bring off a line to bring in line with the proposed crossing location at that.
Right, so we're not causing any more congestion problems with the entrance to the car park at that point.
In terms of the path and the roadway, the roadway ties back into the existing Haverhill Road, and the path ties back in. And there's, I think, south of the car park, there's the existing cinder track.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Okay, just before we go on, I think I just ought to say a little bit about language. In previous LLF sessions, the expression NMU, non-motorized user, has been used quite extensively, but in a sense there's been a change to the language that is used to describe such activity, and it's now referred to as active travel routes rather than NMU. So NMU in previous slides, which you've probably got records of, we're now referring to as active travel. Okay, Ollie, take us on.
Howard Cattell's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Howard, do come on in.
Yes, can you hear me, Tony?
Yes, I can, thanks.
The Haverhill Road is quite narrow. It's got a big car park on it and lots of access ways and drives, and it's a 60-mile-an-hour road. Because we're reducing the limit on the main A1307, that would imply that people speed up when they leave the A1307 and shoot down the hill into the village. Could we please have the 50 limit extended?
So the 50 limit will extend into Haver Hill Road. I haven't got the exact position. I can't recall the exact position as to how far along Haver Hill Road, whether it was the standard offset from the junction, or whether we agreed to be able to extend it up to the car park location. But I'll take that away and just confirm.
Well, why can't it be extended all the way down the hill?
I'll take that point as an action to clarify on those points.
Thank you.
Yeah, good point, Howard. Okay, Ollie, back to you.
Okay. So the next one was just really giving an update on some of the other schemes that were in the section between Cambridge and west of the A11. So scheme 6 and 7, which was the Babraham Research Campus signalised crossings, and scheme 7, the High Street Junction improvements at Babraham High Street. Since we spoke last, that both schemes have been completed on site at the end of September. And I think the initial feedback that certainly we received had been positive about those schemes. And scheme 8, which was the A11 crossing, which was essentially where the Linton Greenway crosses the A11. In light of the current proposals being worked on under the CSET Phase 2, the busway proposals, that element of the works is being delivered as part of that scheme to make sure it's integrated well with the travel hub site that obviously is just next to that crossing location.
And there was some information about that in the most recent CSET consultation, the consultation that took place in October to December, where that was part of that consultation.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
That was the environmental impact assessment work.
Okay.
And people did have an opportunity to make some comments in relation to that. Okay, Ollie.
Great.
So Babraham Road Park and Ride Extension.
That's it. So just an update on this. We had an engagement session back in September, October on this site. And just with an update as to where we're at with that. So subject to the GCP Executive Board approval in March, we're hopeful of achieving a planning application in spring 2021. And just as a summary of the scheme, for those who may have missed it or been unable to attend there, the proposals are to extend the existing Babraham Road Park and Ride site by a number of spaces of I think 150, in excess of 150 spaces. So just to get your bearings, the existing 1307 runs down here, and the path we talked about finishing in relation to the scheme 3 section 1 comes around the corner and is shown in that cyan blue. So subject to the the exec board planning application would be submitted in spring 2021, and if successful, construction expected late 2021. Any questions
Mr. Wookie?
On that proposal?
Yeah, I've got Mr. Wookie first, and then James Littlewood.
Okay. You hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, I'm just noticing that car park goes into the corner there, so that means we're working on the cycleway NMU route just on the outside.
Correct,
the
yes.
Car park on the inside at the same time, so we have the opportunity to align that crossing so that it's actually perpendicular and not constrained horribly to the corner.
On that,
which is what Matt was talking about. You know,
exactly
getting a better alignment.
For that junction, you're talking about the crossing rather than the existing crossing there, doing something that's across
working
there.
both sides of the hedge, we could get that right. So that would be good.
Yeah.
It doesn't look right to me at the moment.
So that's the existing one at the moment. So that's the one that's under the review of the funding as part of the Scheme 3 Section 2 as to what proposals are possible at this.
If I understand this drawing right, at the moment you're proposing to move the crossing a bit further out from where it's currently located. Is that right? the junction?
That's
or is it
crossing
in the same
exactly.
location?
That's at the same location. That's the tactiles, the textured paving that's associated with the existing one. This line, these two lines here, are the widened path as part of the Scheme 3 Section 1 proposals. The widened path. So the point here being we're bringing that path away from the boundary. At the moment, that path's right up against that boundary fence. So as part of that scheme, we're bringing it further out, which also helps with improved visibility for the new access into that extension site.
Oh, what? There's an access. That brown bit's an access on the corner there, is it?
Yes. Yes.
For sort of service. Oh, for pedestrian and
so
cycle routes. Right. I see. Okay. Because the point is, the thing that's important is that the cycleways crosses perpendicularly, and you're not approaching at an angle. And it seems to me that we're not really achieving that there.
Are you referring to the crossing
here?
Exactly.
Yeah, that crossing there.
Yeah.
And if we're working on both sides, we've got no excuse for not getting it right. Anyway, I'll stop. You get the message.
Agreed.
I think the message got across. Thank you. James Littlewood.
Hi, yeah. Could you just let us know what the timings are for this? Because one of the issues we raised with this scheme previously is that there's obviously problems at the moment on the footpath in terms of people walking and cycling into Addenbrooks and people going in the other direction, and it can't cope currently. And what we'd be concerned about is a significant increase in cyclists and walkers on that as a result of expanding the park and ride prior to the improvements to the cycle route. So our view was that the widening of the cycle pedestrian route should take place at the same time as the expansion of the park and ride, so that there is the capacity there then to cope with that.
Agreed. Yeah, and I'm going to cross my fingers when I say this. So, in terms of the timescale for the Bateman Park and Ride, as on screen, this is constructed late 2021. The timescales for the improvements to this path, the Scheme 3 Section 1, is that we're targeting to be on site in May 2021. So May this year. It's not a short project. We're looking at probably about a 5 or 6 month duration in terms of the time frame for building that scheme, because it's got to be done in quite a number of sections in terms of making sure that we're not impacting too significantly on the 1307, whilst also managing the pedestrian and cycle flows along that side of the 1307. So the bottom line is, if all goes to plan, that scheme is completed by the end of 2021, which is just when we're expecting to be in the position to be mobilising or potentially starting on site with this extension. So I think, and given that the planning application is still to go in for this site, this site should follow, albeit at the same time, or follow the pathway improvements, which is the preferred way around, which I think is what your preference is.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, James. Okay, back to you, Ollie.
Okay. There's just really next steps, which I think a summary of some of the points that we've mentioned already. But Scheme 1 mentioned starting on site spring 2021. Scheme 3 Section 1 taking the action away in relation to the Red Cross Lane revised crossing proposals as the key part, as the next step on that. And as I mentioned earlier, construction, we are targeting a start on site in summer 2021. Scheme 3 Section 2, as mentioned earlier, the review of funding to confirm the scope of those 3 core areas, and some improvements in relation to that. So there'll be a further dialogue on that. And Scheme 4 and 18 look to firm up the principles of the revised scheme and prepare the planning application for submission this year. And that concludes the CSET's Phase 1 slide. So,
any questions before we move on to an update about the most recent Phase 2 consultation? Go on, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for that. Just quick question, I may have missed it. When did you think that you might have some details to look at regarding the section between the park and ride and including Hinton Way roundabout and up to, well, just to the east of that.
It's subject to the completion of the funding review that's ongoing at present. Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there's a timescale associated with that ahead of the exec board date. I don't think we're likely to hear anything back from that, which is in March. So that I think it'll be driven around that, Matt. But Martin, you may be able to elaborate a bit more on that.
No, I don't think there's anything more to say that can usefully inform Matt at this point. We will bring this to the board for the funding issues and report back after that.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Hopefully that doesn't preclude doing something at the corner of the park and ride. Thanks.
Okay, Matt. Thank you.
Okay. Well, there are no other.
Is it David Blake?
Oh, have I missed David?
I just had a pop up on my screen.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, go on, David, please.
Yeah, very quick one. I was just going to ask what the current budget is for the first part of this scheme.
I'm doing work on that at the moment, David, so it wouldn't really be the right thing for me to quote numbers at this particular point, but I'm hoping to be able to have the funding to cover a lot of the schemes we've talked about this evening, if not them all.
The only thing I was going to ask, is there a contingency budget so that, for example, the extra paths and other sorts of items can be undertaken?
Yeah, well, we're doing a review of that, and that would be part of the submission for the funding, David, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Right, so shall we move on to phase 2? And I think Michael's going to take us through this.
Yeah.
Yes, Tony, so thanks. I'll share my screen with the presentation. So my colleague Sarah is going to contribute to the later slides on archaeology, and Jane's going to wrap up on the next steps that I'll start off.
And just before we start, I would say that we haven't forgotten the 2 questions that Howard sent in before the meeting, so we'll make sure we address those during this session.
Is that showing the full page slide view now?
Not for me.
Sorry.
Well, I've got them. I've got something.
You've got the present. Is that the presenter view? I'll swap it round.
That's better.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so the agenda, there's 5 points on the agenda. A brief summary of the feedback from the recent EIA consultation, a update on the route alignment around Babraham, which was one of the key aspects of the consultation, an update on the progress of environmental, archaeological and geotechnical surveys, and finally next steps. So the consultation on the environmental impact assessment ran from the 19th of October to the 14th of December. that was advertised through the distribution of 19,000 consultation leaflets within the scheme area, supported by advertising and social media activity. We had a good response to the consultation, over 430 responses in total. The exact number is of a written responses as opposed to responses to the survey is still just in the process of being checked and verified. That's why I've said over rather than an exact final number. But we had 304 responses to the online consultation survey, including responses that were submitted in paper form. Also, although the consultation had to be undertaken virtually as a result of COVID, we had a really good level of engagement with the virtual exhibition website. So 1,412 unique visitors, 21% of those people provided a response to the survey, and almost double that number in terms of total page views across the site during the consultation period. In terms of the location of the respondents, you can see from this slide that we had responses from all areas along the route, and both from residents, and we also had a significant response from people who regularly travel in this area. So it was possible for people to respond to this question, by ticking more than one category. So so some people could, these numbers could include one person who has selected more than one category. So this is just a very high level overview of the key feedback themes from the consultation. Lots of very detailed letters and responses making multiple comments within a single response. All of this is being analysed, and all the individual points are being captured separately. But this is just a very quick overview of the areas where we got where we can see we've got the greatest level of response. So first, on the route alignment, many comments related to specific sections of the route, including the Babraham to Sawston section that we asked specific questions about due to the realignment that was consulted on. Some comments for the route is too far from the villages along the route, which I know is a point that has been made previously, and as we have moved the stop slightly closer to the villages where possible as a result of that previous feedback. On landscaping and greenbelt, lots of helpful requests regarding the approach to additional planting to be undertaken as part of the scheme to enhance landscaping and reduce negative impacts of the scheme. Some concerns about development on greenbelt land and the loss of green space, but the number of people making that point was lower than the number of people who were making positive suggestions about planting and landscaping. Some comments about parking provision along the route. Some requests for more stops to be provided or more parking to be provided at the existing stops. Some positive comments about the active travel benefits of the scheme, and requests for widening of the active travel path beyond the 3.5 meters currently proposed. And then in terms of the wider connectivity provided by the scheme, a large number of respondents saying that they would use the scheme for recreational purposes, and a smaller number stating that they'd use the scheme for commuting to work. So as I say, that's just a very high level snapshot of the most significant themes coming out of the consultation so far. There will be a comprehensive consultation report produced, and the full results of the consultation will be included in the forthcoming reports to the Joint Assembly and the board in the run-up to the board meeting on the 1st of July. So these are just this is an initial indication. This is not a comprehensive and complete analysis of the consultation responses yet. So, as I said, the consultation included a proposal for realignment of the route closer to Sawston Road and Abraham. We can now say that following further assessment work and taking into account the preferences expressed by Cheveley Park Farms, the landowner, the parish council, and local residents for the original Brown route, we have concluded that the revised route at Abraham should be taken no further. So that doesn't require a formal decision by the board, because we're taking the change no further, and we're pursuing the original Brown route that had already been endorsed by the board in June 2020. But we will make reference to that in the board process, just for clarity.
Right, Sam would like to say something, and then we'll move on to Sarah with the archaeology and so on. Sam?
Hi, thanks, Tony. On your key feedback theme slide, Michael.
Yes, I can go back to that.
Can I just check what that final comment about connectivity is actually saying? Like, is that saying that more people who responded to the consultation said they would use it for recreation than for commuting, or is there some meaning that I'm missing?
That's what I'm saying. The put that under the theme of connectivity, because we felt that if people are using the scheme for recreational purposes, they might use, the new active travel path as part of, perhaps a circular walk, or the active travel path does connect into existing public rights of way, for example. So that's the sort of relevance of connectivity, that it does link in with some existing public rights of way.
And it's in relation to the item above, active travel, rather than the public transport element.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew.
And it's not an either or. People could use it for both.
Yeah.
And there will be a full report on the consultation coming out in due course. It takes quite a while to fully process all the comments and put them into the report.
Did David?
Is that okay, Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you.
David Plank?
I've just unmuted myself. I just wanted to follow up that point. I think Sam is right, if I'm reading her right. That last point is open to misinterpretation, and Andrew's clarification that relates to responses on the active travel path, not on the public transport route, is really a rather important point. Given that the majority of the users of the public transport route will come from the A505 end, the A11 end, and they're not responding necessarily to this specific question. So the volume, the assessments of the volume of travel on the public transport route are not affected by that particular finding. That's my reading of it anyway.
Well, the full analysis of all the consultation responses will be in the consultation report, which we will be releasing in due course. This was just trying to give you a summary right now.
We possibly summarised it a little bit too much.
I think it would be helpful if we went on to Sarah's presentation about the archaeological side of things, and then we must answer the 2 questions that were posed written in before the meeting started, and any other comments that people want to make. Sarah.
Thanks, Tony. So in terms of what surveys are ongoing on site or about to start, we've been doing ecology surveys, seems like forever, probably for over a year. These are mostly complete now, but we do still have some bat surveys ongoing. There may be a need next season, kind of spring, summer season, to go back and survey some areas that we were unable to access if we're able to gain access to those areas next year. But right now we're nearly complete with our ecology surveys. No doubt lots of you have seen that we've got trial trenching ongoing at the moment. There's open trenches on Cheveley Park Farms and just south of Ninewells. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in the next few slides. Our ground investigation will be starting soon and running until the end of June. And we'll also have some surveyors out doing lighting baseline surveys in February and March. They're generally standing around taking some pictures. So there's no intrusive works involved with that. Okay, next slide, please. So just to give you an update on where we are with archaeology, this slide shows our route, and the green areas are areas where we've completed our trial trenching. The orange areas are where we've got trenching ongoing, and the red areas we haven't yet started. And there's lots of pink lines, or they show up more like blobs at this scale, which are where the trenches are. So if we look around the Ninewells area, the green insert kind of shows some of the known historic features that we knew were in this area. The red line is an old track, and there's areas of enclosure. So we've designed our trenches to try and hit those, and they have been showing up in the trenches. It's hard to see if you're not a specialist, but the picture does show an old ditch that they found, and further along that trench there's a dark area which is the track that they've intersected. On the opposite side of the railway line to our scheme, near this location, there is a scheduled monument which is an Iron Age Roman settlement, so we knew there was settlement activity in this area. And the dates are still uncertain for all these features, and that will be worked on in the coming months. Okay, next slide, please. Moving down to the river near Stapleford, we've completed investigations on the north of the riverbank. Rivers are often an area which have been settled historically because of the good water source. The picture just shows the blue lines kind of indicate the old river and flood areas. They tend to be more vegetated, so greener, and then areas outside the blue lines are less green. They're largely gravel deposits, and we have found evidence of settlements in this area as well. It's typical of what we would expect to find, and again the dates are uncertain, and we're going to be working on that. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, moving down to Cheveley Park Farms, we did, or are still completing, trial trenching of both of the routes, which Mike's just talked about, because they were both still options at the time we planned the trenching. On the northern route, which is the route we are no longer pursuing, we have found an Anglo-Saxon cemetery site. We found 3 skeletons, and there's a picture of one of them there. One is a middle-aged woman who'd clearly lived a hard life. One of them is an infant, and I don't know much about the third one because I've only just found that. At least one of the skeletons will need to be lifted because there's signs that it's been hit with farm machinery, so it's not safe in situ, and decisions will be made about the best way to deal with the other 2 skeletons in due course. In this area, there's also Bronze Age ditch enclosures, and we do intersect on our southern route, the northern end. So where 168 is in the blue circle, and then in the green insert, you can see 168. That's our trench on the preferred alignment that we're taking forward, where we are just intersecting the end of this enclosure system, which we know extends a lot further to the south. And we are picking that up, which we expected to. That's it on that slide. Okay, is there any questions? Oh, here we go, Travel Hub. So we didn't find much in the Travel Hub site, but just in the area just outside the Travel Hub site, we found an Anglo-Saxon Gruben house, a sunken pit house, which you can apparently see in the trench on the left, but I think you need to be a bit closer than we are here to pick up the details. They found a reutilized medallion, so that it's a Roman coin, but was reutilized in the Anglo-Saxon period as a medallion, so it's got a hole through it, so it could be on a string around someone's neck, and a brooch, which is the picture on the right. Obviously doesn't look very brooch-like, having been in the soil for so long. We've also picked up the former water meadows in that area. We've got a lot of historical written evidence about those meadows, and what we're finding in the ground backs up that evidence. So we can see signs of multiple recutting and alterations to those. Okay, that's it. Is there any questions on the archaeology?
Well, I haven't got anybody sign it. So if anybody wants to come and ask a question about the archaeology side of things, I'm happy to do that. But say Howard Kettle did write in 2 questions, and if Michaela could read the questions out, and we'll have responses to those, please. Howard? Yeah, well, Howard can read them out.
Thank you, if you could hear me.
Yes, go on, Howard.
Questions. I'll take them one at a time if you like.
Yes, please.
My first question is the GCP currently undertaking any environmental impact assessments on the alternative Shelford Railway alignment? I just jump in there and say it's really good to note what we're learning tonight, that more analysis will be provided on the consultation that's just closed. I would comment that there was no opportunity on this survey to say, for anybody to say whether there is a better off-road route that could be consulted on. We've talked about connectivity, but the route being proposed actually bypasses completely Great Shelford and Stapleford, and therefore will not help connectivity at all. And on the survey, unless I got it completely wrong, I couldn't actually find any questions that were being asked by the GCP on the stretch of the route, which is the most sensitive, which is the bit around Stapleford. So my question is, any work going along in terms of any alternative cross-country routes?
Who would like to answer that one? Martin? Andrew?
Essentially, to answer your questions, Howard, is we had a consultation in 2019, which dealt with the route, and people had the opportunity to comment then. There was a question at the end of the this last consultation, which was mainly on the more defined proposals, which was for people to raise any other comments. And as Mike highlighted earlier, we have actually received quite a few comments about the route, which are still being analysed, and we will be reporting those and responding to that in the public consultation report. Regarding doing an environmental impact assessment along the railway route, an environmental impact assessment is done based on a fairly advanced design of the proposals in order that we can assess the impacts of those proposals. We don't have a design for a scheme along the so-called railway route because we don't believe it to be possible or desirable.
Okay, thank you, thank you, Andrew. Shall I ask you question number 2?
Of course you can, yes, go on.
Which is that the CSEC Joint Assembly report given in June 2020 stated that existing bus services would have the option of using the new public transport routes, providing they comply with clean vehicle standards. And at subsequent meetings, it has been suggested that the bus could come off the busway to link up the villages before returning to the busway to complete its journey. And I'm wondering whether this is actually just pie in the sky or whether this is actually a possibility and indeed a proposal.
Mike Payne can answer that question.
Yes, thank you for the question, Howard. So that proposal that you've referred to about the possibility of a bus service, not the bus service, leaving the route and then rejoining it, or leaving the route and serving the villages. That was formally documented in the public transport network strategy, which was published as an appendix to the outline business case. So it was a serious proposal, and has been published. The situation at the moment is that we are currently doing some further technical work to develop and refine the public transport network proposals and look at the impact, further look at the impact of the proposed new services on the existing bus services within the scheme area. And as part of that, we've had some initial meetings with the local bus operators just before Christmas. So the idea that services could, that in addition to services that just run along the public transport route from the travel hub to the biomedical campus and back again, could be complemented by other services that join the public transport route at intermediate points is actively being considered further. So we're intending to have a further dialogue with the bus operators about, once we've completed this work, to explore some of these ideas further, and then get some, continue a dialogue with operators to try and come up with the best possible plan for the public transport network in this area. That is a holistic plan for the network. It's not just just for services that are going to run on the new public transport route. And obviously in the current environment, ultimately it is the bus operators themselves who have the final say on which services they wish to operate on a commercial basis. So we have to work with the bus operators to try and find a a proposal that that they will support. But yes, it is a serious proposal. I'm not saying it's going to be straightforward or an obvious commercial winner, but it's something that we're continuing to work on in collaboration and dialogue with the bus operators.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So it could impact on the existing commerciality of the existing City 7 bus.
Well, that's why we want to work collaboratively with the bus operators, so that there are no unintended consequences for existing services, and there is a holistic solution for the public transport network along the A1301 and A1307 corridors, as well as the new public transport route.
Thank you.
Okay, Howard.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Tony.
I don't have any hands raised. Any final questions or comments from anybody? But I'm not seeing anything, so I'd like to thank all those who've attended this.
I've still got the next steps if people want to know that.
This meeting and for their contributions. I think there is one more.
I think we've lost you, Tony.
Yeah. Have I come back now?
Yes, you have.
Have I come back now? Yeah. Sorry. Is Jane going to take us through this last slide?
Yes, just quickly. We're in the process of finalizing the design that will be going into the Transport and Works Act application later in the year. And that should be ready about middle of March, towards the end of March. We will then be looking at going to joint assembly in June and the GCP exec board in July to request permission to submit the Transport and Works Act application, which is planned for August. Thereafter, we have the public inquiry. We envisage there will be a public inquiry, and that is planned for the summer of 2022. The start of works, we're looking at 2023 with a completion late 2024, 2025, early 2025. Any questions on timelines?
Is James Littlewood has got his hands up.
Yeah, James.
Hi, yeah, just looking at that time frame, obviously you're still carrying out surveys currently, and we just heard that some ecological surveys won't take place until the spring. So if you're finalising your report in March, I'd rather suggest you're doing that before you finished all your research. But the point I really want to make is that is there going to be an opportunity for us to comment on or feed into the outputs of those surveys, or are we just going to be required to respond as a member of the public, etc., to the TWA application?
Well, I would have thought the TWA application came to the LLF for consideration, so that any views from the LLF could be passed on to the Joint Assembly and Executive Board when it meets.
There would be the normal engagement around a board meeting. And I think we're planning also some earlier engagement when we've completed the public consultation report and so on. There are a number of strands of activity which come together in May, June this year, one of which is the environmental impact assessment, as well as the transport assessment, all the supporting documents, and as well as the updated business case, taking into account latest guidance from the DFT, an attempt to look at what a post-COVID world would look like.
And on James's point,
we also have some planned engagement sometime in May.
Yeah.
On James's point about the surveys, we have a substantial amount of ecology data now, James. On any scheme, there is always land that we can't access to do surveys when we would like. If that land should become available, that's what I'm talking about doing next spring. If it doesn't become available, we can continue with the information we have, and we will state in our environmental assessment where we haven't been able to access land.
And we would have concluded the archaeology surveys by before then. That's due to be finished by February.
Yes.
Is that all right, James?
Yeah, well, I look forward to it sounds like there is plans to have further engagement with the LLF and other stakeholders.
Yeah, we'll be happy, very happy, James, to come and talk to you with the output of the surveys and the environmental impact assessment.
Okay. Any final comments from anybody? Well, as I say, I'd like to thank all those who've attended the meeting, but Howard likes.
Howard has got his hand up, yeah.
Just in case, well, just to clarify, really, the two parish councils, Great Shelford and Stapleford Parish Council, have commissioned an independent report because our position is, and it's on our website, our position statement states that no consultation has been undertaken regarding an off-road route, and therefore we are pursuing our own investigation regarding what we call the Shelford Railway alignment routes. The initial results from that are extremely helpful. We've commissioned further reporting from our independent consultants, and we will be in a position to publish and liaise with the GCP very shortly now on the findings of those reports. And we would expect that the GCP will do exactly as Roger Hickford has promised to me and to the parish councils, that there will be a reconsideration of the route in order to preserve the green belt and the unique landscape which is being destroyed.
Well, we look forward to receiving that report, Howard.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah. If you could send it to me as well, I'd be very grateful, Howard.
Of course, Tony, of course.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I think that concludes this evening's meeting. As I say, thank you to all those who've attended and for the comments they've made. I hope you found the meeting helpful and useful. Thank you to all those who participated on the panel in providing the presentations and answering questions and so on. So with that, thank you to everybody, and I wish you a safe and healthy evening and future. So thank you very much, and I formally declare the meeting closed.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good night.